The Ontario government bowing to public pressure, taking another stab at bringing in paid sick days. A seller's market, but beware. A good price for your home doesn't mean finding your next dwelling is going to be easy. A live look outside now, where we are still under a severe thunderstorm watch from Environment Canada for Windsor-Essex and Chatham-Kent. Feels like 29 with the humidex that Colette warned us about. She joins us with the full forecast tonight. I'm Chris Ensing. Thanks for watching. The price of steel has skyrocketed, a growing problem for industries and one that could trickle down to us. Dale Molnar joins us now live. How much of a jump are we talking here, Dale?
Well, Chris, in about the last 6 months, has doubled. Anywhere from $700 US a metric ton to even $1,650 a metric ton, depending on the type of steel. Industry experts blame a shortage due to the pandemic, hoarding, and aggressive infrastructure projects in China and the US. Ryan Jordan makes steel railings and other products for homes. He wants to give quotes to customers that are good for 30 days, but sometimes they change in 4 to 5 days.
Which is hard to quote a job when you can only guarantee a price for 3-4 days. It doesn't give you much time.
And it's hard to go back to the customer for more money. The same holds true for some auto parts companies. The president of Sherlock Products says if auto parts makers aren't locked into a contract with an auto company for steel they buy, it's hard to make a profit.
They're definitely going to hurt long run. And I see this not just a COVID issue. This is also and I hate to say it, but for lack of better term, using the word Trump, I mean, when he shut down supply through from offshore materials, it created an effect where even the steel companies were saying that it was wrong to do it.
Kelly would like to see offshore imports of steel increased to satisfy demand. When it comes to the price of a car, a steel industry expert told us the price won't fluctuate much because the cost of sheet metal used in auto manufacturing isn't rising as high as other types of steel, such as rebar.
That may translate into a 3 or 4% cost impact spread across the whole cost of a car.
The president of the Automotive Parts Association tells CBC News the automakers will squeeze the auto parts manufacturers rather than raising the price of a car.
You know, if you're selling a sedan or an SUV right now, the last thing that you're going to do in the middle of the pandemic is raise the price.
The price is also hitting the construction industry hard, even for steel drywall studs. The president of the Ottawa Construction Association says it affected a $100 million project in Ottawa.
They went to market and they probably had their budget based on a year ago. The project had to get canceled.
And DeVries doesn't expect the prices to stabilize until sometime in the first quarter of next year. Chris?
Now, Dale, a lot of projects in that story, but we've got one here in Windsor-Essex. A lot of people are wondering about the Gordie Howe Bridge. What happens there?
Well, there won't be any increases in terms of passing them on to the federal government. The Bridge Authority tells us that any cost increases the consortium building the bridge experiences will not be passed on to the federal government because the consortium is locked into a contract. Chris?
This is Dale. CBC's Dale Molnar, live tonight. A community alert this afternoon. There's been an increase in drug-related overdoses. This is the second time that Windsor-Essex has been put on alert this month. Now, they happened last week between April 19th and the 25th. 8 opioid overdoses across those days. 6 of those involved fentanyl. The reported overdoses happened primarily in Windsor. And a look now at the local COVID-19 situation. The health unit says Windsor-Essex is doing okay, but not great. Today, another 49 new cases. There are now 453 active cases of COVID-19 in Windsor-Essex, and about 29% of those cases involve variants of concern.
I think we are doing okay. I wouldn't say that we're doing great. We are doing okay. We are stabilizing the cases and showing a trend that maybe it's dropping down, and we will be in a better spot with all these restrictions that are currently in place. And by the time when we are able to vaccinate quite a few of the people in our community, and also with the stay-at-home order in place, we'll be in a much better position when these restrictions will be lifted.
Almost 145,000 people have received one dose of a vaccine. That's 33% of the population of Windsor-Essex. There's more vaccine on the way as well. 650,000 doses of Moderna arrived in Toronto today, half of what was expected, but officials say to expect vaccines from Moderna and other manufacturers to accelerate throughout May. And the very first doses of the single-shot Johnson & Johnson vaccine have landed in Canada. More than 300,000 doses were inside of this shipment. Now, the Johnson & Johnson vials do not need to be stored at ultra-cold temperatures, so experts say it will allow them to be administered in hard-to-reach settings. A spokesperson for Ontario's Ministry of Health told CBC that it was too early to say exactly how the J&J vaccine will be distributed. But of the more than 300,000 now in Canada, about 116,000 are allotted to Ontario. In response to criticism over months, the province announcing today that it plans to bring in paid sick days through a temporary program. Lorenda Redekop has the details on the plan and the reaction.
We are the only province in Canada to introduce paid sick days specific to COVID-19.
The government announced its plan after people have been calling for help for essential workers for months. Doctors and others say it's mainly workers and their family members showing up in ICUs and emergency rooms with COVID-19. The plan would provide up to $200 a day for a maximum of 3 days. It would run from April 19th to September 25th, and it would be delivered by the Workplace Safety and Insurance Board to reimburse employers. The government promises there won't be any delay in payments.
There's no forms, there's no applications. The employer will pay the worker, and the employer will be reimbursed through the province.
My message to...
This is a government that's been under fire to bring in paid sick days as hospitalizations have increased.
This is a game changer, and this will save lives.
The government's had over a year to do this, and today's announcement is a huge disappointment.
The opposition argued this is coming way too late.
It's really not enough to stop the spread of COVID-19 in our workplaces. It's not enough to give people the financial security they need to be able to protect themselves, their co-workers, and their communities from COVID-19.
The province also repeated plans to double the federal government's current program, which would allow $1,000 a week for up to 4 weeks. But that hasn't been confirmed by the federal government.
We're going to continue to have that discussion with the federal government on many levels. The point is that their program exists, it's in place.
The 3 paid sick days will need to be passed in legislation. It's unclear when that will happen. Lorenda Redekop, CBC News, Toronto.
One local restaurant worker says the paid sick leave program is a good start, but thinks 3 days just isn't enough.
With COVID-19, with the variants going around nowadays, if I get hit with the flu in the winter, I could be out for a week. And that's me. I'm a healthy 30-year-old. If someone else working at a grocery store or at a restaurant or another minimum wage job gets hit with the flu, it could knock them out for a week, maybe 2. 3 days is nowhere close to enough with covering that.
There's a new report shedding more light on why Ontario's nursing homes were so badly hit by COVID-19. It comes from the province's Auditor General. Well, the Auditor General says that there's plenty of blame to be shared for what happened. The Minister of Long-Term Care is accepting none of it. Queen's Park reporter Mike Crawley has the story.
The white wooden crosses are starting to show signs of wear. It's been a year since the first of these were planted, a memorial to those killed when COVID-19 ripped through the Camilla Care nursing home in Mississauga. 68 infected residents died, one of the worst outbreaks in Ontario. Everyone in this province knows nursing homes were devastated by the pandemic. The unanswered question, why did it get so bad?
A history of issues not being addressed in a timely way.
The Auditor General says previous governments neglected the long-term care sector for years. Then, when the pandemic hit, the current government moved too slowly to protect residents.
Some of the decisions with respect to the long-term care homes could have been made quicker.
The auditor says the province waited too long to order long-term care homes to put protective measures in place. For instance, nursing home staff were not ordered to wear masks until 4 weeks after the pandemic was declared. Ontario actually made long-term care more crowded in March of last year by transferring hundreds of patients out of hospital into nursing homes. The Minister of Long-Term Care was asked repeatedly about taking responsibility for what happened. She took none.
The building's on fire and you're running into it to try and save people? Yeah, I think that's pretty much what we tried to do. But we didn't start the fire.
What about the fact that more long-term care residents died in Ontario's second wave than in the first?
In the second wave, it comes back to the long-term care homes being in the regions of high community spread. Very hard to keep it out.
To see this minister deny any responsibility and try to deflect responsibility to others it's horrifying.
They may have not started the fire, but they poured gasoline on it by not taking the actions that was needed quick enough.
Another report on long-term care is due on Friday. It's from the independent commission appointed by the government last summer. Nearly half of the 8,000 people who've died of COVID-19 in Ontario lived in long-term care. Mike Crawley, CBC News, Toronto.
And the provincial government wants more measures in place for people flying into Ontario. They've asked the federal government to bring in mandatory testing to all people who are traveling into the province.
We've heard this call, like you said, for months from various science advisors. Again, this was reiterated by our chief medical officer just in the past 24 hours, but we know this is necessary. There are variants of concern that are coming into the province of Ontario from other provinces, from other countries, and we need the federal government to do more to end the loopholes when it comes to this travel.
People flying into Canada need a test 72 hours before their flight. The Ontario government says this would be an extension of those measures. Other provinces have implemented their own systems. People need to fill out a travel form, for example, to fly into Newfoundland and Labrador. The federal government says they're open to all ideas to prevent the spread of COVID-19, but ultimately provinces have control of their borders. India's massive second wave of COVID-19 is putting an enormous strain on the country's healthcare system. More than 360,000 new cases have been reported in the last 24 hours. More than 200,000 people have died. The country is preparing a massive vaccination drive to battle its way out of the pandemic, but it's struggling to meet the demand. Rebecca Bundle reports from Mumbai.
The scenes of people struggling for air, pleading for help and breaking down in grief are becoming all too familiar. India's public health emergency is showing no signs of abating amid shortages of hospital beds, oxygen and medicine. Delhi has become the epicenter of the pandemic, and as its crematoriums are overwhelmed, there are fears that the death toll may be far higher than the official figures. The second wave of the virus has been described as hitting India like a tsunami. India's airlifting in medical supplies, and countries from around the world are coming to its aid. Vital supplies are being sent from countries including Britain, the US and Australia, including ventilators and oxygen concentrators, while Canada is sending $10 million to the Indian Red Cross. But the crisis is so deep that many fear that all this won't be enough.
Transporting oxygen is a logistical nightmare at this stage because India, there's a short supply of cryogenic tankers. We've airlifted some tankers, from Germany. So we're trying to meet that shortfall. Then, there is also a short supply of cylinders.
The country's vaccination drive is seen as one of India's best hopes to get through the pandemic, but even that is struggling. India is the world's largest manufacturer of vaccines, but parts of the country, including Mumbai, have been running out of doses. This comes as its vaccination drive is set to open up to everyone over the age of 18 as of Saturday. But citizens struggled to register online on Wednesday, with many reporting that slots were unavailable and as the app repeatedly crashed. The crisis continues and there's still no end in sight. Rebecca Bundon for CBC News, Mumbai.
And back here in Windsor-Essex, we've told you before about how it's a seller's housing market across Ontario. But just because you've sold your home doesn't mean it's always smooth sailing from there. CBC's Katerina Georgieva takes a closer look at some of the mishaps that might occur.
So, you've sold your home. You are riding the wave of euphoria over that sale. But in today's market, it's not always trouble-free, from some sales falling through to a tough hunt for your next home. Michael Margarides just sold his 1.8-hectare Old Castle property for $1.3 million, starting a race against time, a couple months to find a new home.
I was
a rich man without a house.
He bid on 5 homes and lost them all. He was resistant of engaging in bidding wars, saying it unfairly drives prices up.
It's unethical or dirty. And they told me, if you don't go up, you will never get a house.
But he eventually caved, bid $804,000 on a house listed at $700,000. Then, pressured by the realtor to go higher, settled on $825,000 to make it his. Margaritis says it isn't worth the price tag. Then, another roadblock. Because the new home closed before the current home, he needed bridge financing from the bank to cover him during that window of time. Tough to get. He and his wife are retirees, joint income of about $75,000. It took a while, but he secured the funds he needed. The expert advice? Buy first and then sell.
What we're finding is a lot of people are selling their homes, but not have homes to go to.
Ingrata says she has clients who sold and are now stuck renting. Another big issue, sales falling through. Though the local Realtors Association says it's not that common, Ingrata says she sees it now more than ever before. Sometimes it's because buyers miscalculate what they can qualify for. But a growing issue, banks not always agreeing with your bid. Say you're pre-approved for $500,000 and you really like a home. You decide you want to go all in, bid way over asking, and you get the home. Well, the home still needs to be appraised so the bank can decide if it's worth that price tag. If the bank determines it's not and you only get, say, $450 instead of the $500 you were counting on, you then need to make up the difference on your own. And if you can't, you have to back out. The sale falls through and the house goes back on the market. For Margaritis, he's blown away by the state of things.
It's easy to sell, but when you buy, you'll find out that the money you got probably won't be enough.
Katerina Georgieva, CBC News, Windsor.
Graduation day for guide dogs, a time to celebrate for the Canadian National Institute for the Blind. Ryan Hui in Tecumseh paired with his first pup, a yellow Labrador retriever named Joe.
I thought I was getting a robot. I thought they were going to hand me this dog and he was just going to listen to absolutely everything I said. But he has a personality. He's a growing creature. He's a living creature, right? There's days where he doesn't really want to work, or there's days when he sees something that I don't see, or it's different, right? So there's a lot of things that go into that too with safety. But I think the real thing was when I'm walking with my my 1-year-old daughter, she's usually strapped to my chest. I have all my faith in the dog for my safety and for her safety and for Joe's safety, because he's weaseled his way into our hearts and become part of our family. A car was rounding the corner and I didn't see it or hear it, and the driver didn't see me. So if I had my cane, I would have definitely been hit. However, Joe saw the car and he stopped dead in his tracks and wouldn't move forward. And you know what, that was like the real moment when I said, wow, this is exactly for me. This is exactly what a guide dog, what I need a guide dog for. And he's let me be more spontaneous. I can go places on my own. He's giving me that independence, the safety that I need. I can walk at night. I couldn't walk with my cane in a straight line to save my life. Now Joe walks in the straight line, I just kind of tag along. He's just really, really changed travel for me. And I can't wait for the world to open up a little bit more so we can go and see what kind of mischief we can get in on our adventures.
I think Joe just weaseled his way into our hearts as well there. That's a live look outside right now as we expect a chance of rain here, and that humidex still high. Colette Kennedy coming up next with the forecast. Colette Kennedy joins us now live. Colette, looking outside, we see those rain clouds. We've had our fair share for the last little bit here as well. Gets you into that grass growing season when we start to get those lawnmowers that come out. But a reminder, and you've been looking into this, those lawns, not just our own, eh?
Yes, that's right. We share them with some cute little creatures, those fluffy little bunnies, yeah, that are hopping around in our yards. And most people have probably heard that common expression, you know, mating like rabbits. Maybe you've heard it phrased slightly differently, but this is a PG show, right, Chris? So, yeah, they get busy, okay? They have 5 litters throughout that season of our gardening and lawn mowing from April through to September. And, you know, it can be dangerous because one of their favorite places, they love to tuck their young right into our lawn. So I spoke with Gail Lenters from Shades of Hope Wildlife Refuge. Chris, last year they took in 1,200 orphaned or displaced or injured bunnies into their care.
And what do people look for? You know, they want to avoid harming the nest. What are they looking for in their lawn?
So bunnies like to nest out in the open. So they're hiding in the open. They'll make a shallow depression in your lawn. It could be in the middle of your lawn. It could be under your deck or in your garden. And identifying it can be very difficult. But if you come across some bunny fluff, mother lines the nest or puts a lining of her fur on the top of the nest, and that would be the only evidence that you would normally see of the nest. We certainly encourage people to please live with the bunnies and don't disturb them. If you find them, they're only in the nest for 3 weeks and then they're gone.
And you know, if, however, you find that that nest has, I know they're so sweet, but if you find it's been disturbed, especially by your dog or cat or for the kids, the best thing to do is just to gather the bunnies up, place them right back in the nest, cover it back up with mama's fur on top, and don't relocate it because she's got her GPS. She knows exactly where it is and she needs to be able to come back to feed them. You know, bunnies, they don't have, the babies have no scent, but mama does, and so she only comes twice a day to check on them, and she comes in the morning at dawn, she comes again at dusk, and to feed them. So, you know, just if she's not there, it doesn't mean that they're necessarily on their own and they're not being looked after. But if you do feel like you need to protect them because your, you know, dog or cat's really digging at them, you could put something heavy over top during the day only that has some airflow under it, but make sure you move it again then at dusk so she can get back at them. Don't assume that they need you to rescue them, that's all. Yeah, so that's the
sound advice.
The plan. I just want to remind people because it's spring and, you know, this is the season, but it does go all the way through to September. All right, let's get into your weather here quickly. We have some of that to talk about too. I know we've had some active weather. We're going to see more gray skies, drizzle and fog tonight, but still a chance this evening for some isolated thunderstorm activity. I'll get to that in a moment. We're going to transition out of this, but then the temperatures will go back up again on Saturday. Yeah, they were already up today at 25. Current temperatures still very mild. They're coming down for the next couple of days. Severe thunderstorm watch because we could still see a little bit of activity. Doesn't look like they're necessarily going to pump up, but there's still some lightning strikes in there, so be aware of it. The biggest thing to be concerned about with that is going to be some very strong winds in there or also some small hail. That potential is there. Still cloudy, drizzly tomorrow, but look at the change in our temperature. 13 Friday would come out of it, but only 13 for the high. And there you go into the weekend. Those temperatures start to come back up. You're going to want to get in your garden, and now you have some new knowledge to get in there.
Thanks for this, Colette.
You're welcome.
It is a big night for U.S. President Joe Biden. More when we return. U.S. President Joe Biden marks a milestone in his presidency tonight in Washington, speaking to a joint session of Congress. Similar to the State of the Union address, he's going to use this event to mark his first 100 days in the White House. And before we go, CBC Windsor, lucky enough to have been nominated for multiple radio, television, and digital news awards. Our program's up for a live news special event, as well as for excellence in editing. Nominations include a CBC Windsor podcast, an investigative radio story, and a radio piece for excellence in sound, as well as a radio newscast. CBC Windsor's website also nominated for enterprise journalism and an investigative story. Winners will be announced in May. That's it for CBC Windsor News. Don't forget, for news anytime, you can go to our website at cbc.ca/Windsor. That's it for us. Have a wonderful evening.